What is up, my brothers? We talk about a lot of different topics on this channel. I had a request from a guy when I posted on the community tab on my YouTube channel. There was a whole bunch of interest in this topic. And he said, I'm tired of dealing with topics on women. Let's talk about the ROIs for men. Let's talk about the best type of properties to invest in and delve into things like careers over the next 5 to 10 years for men. I'm not going to deal with the career question in this video, but I'm going to be talking about real estate and more specifically my interest in real estate and why I've recently got rid of all of my real estate, with the exception of my principal residence. So if you take a look at the richest people in the world, you'll find on that list many of them, in fact probably the vast majority of them if I'm not mistaken, had acquired their wealth through real estate. Now, real estate is typically a good investment vehicle over a long period of time. In the last couple of years since the scamdemic, I have dumped all of my real estate. Now, when I say dumped, I mean sold. I had a couple of investment condos downtown. The market just isn't good. You've got all kinds of problems with tenants. So I guess in this video, what I'm going to be talking about more specifically is why I've decided not to put my money in real estate and why you might want to contemplate doing the same. Now, the Canadian market is a little bit different, not even a little bit, but a lot different from the rest of the world. I'll have my editor put up a chart on the screen over here, and it's comparing Canadian real estate to US real estate versus income, growth in income, inflation, stuff like that. And really the long story short, the TLDR version of it all is that in Canada, the price of real estate versus incomes is way higher. Way higher than almost anywhere else in the world. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 markets, if I'm not mistaken, which might be worse than large cities in Canada like Toronto, Vancouver, and the like. But for the vast majority of Canadian residents, it's screwed here, and I'll tell you why. We have an immigration policy in Canada. It's got a lot to do with immigration, with zoning and building and stuff like that, but I'll tell you what's going on. The federal government is letting in 1 million immigrants a year. For those of you that are unfamiliar, Canada's population is about 39-40 million. In the United States, it's about 10 times higher. It's close to 400 million. The US lets in about 1 million immigrants a year. Canada lets in about 1 million immigrants a year. So you do the math and you see that you really need a lot of housing to put people up, and we don't really have that. We don't have housing starts. We don't have the construction workers needed to build housing. We don't have anything lined up. And it's been that way for the last 7 to 10 years, only getting worse. Immigration has increased under the Trudeau government. I have my own thoughts on him. If you know me or you've watched me for a while or seen me on podcasts, you know that I'm not a big fan of the guy. I think his policies suck, and a lot of the decisions he's made for this country are spiraling it downhill. But we'll save that for another video. We're talking about housing in this one. Investing in real estate only makes sense. I learned this lesson from a mentor of mine years ago. It only makes sense if you could net about 1% in rental income on the value of the property. So let's use very simple math. If you buy a property for $100,000, you should be collecting about $1,000 a month in rental income. That would be good. In Canada, you are lucky if you can get about 1/4%. Okay, so not 1%, I'm talking 1/4%. That is considered reasonably good. Okay, I think the best performing piece of property that I had was a condo that was worth, I don't know, $880,000. Like in downtown Toronto, you get a 2-bedroom shoebox for about 600, 700 square feet, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and that's it. And it's just tightly packed, maybe a parking space, you know. They're selling parking spaces in some premium condos downtown Toronto for $200,000. A space to park your car is $200,000. And on a condo that I had down there, the best performing one was probably doing about $2,800 a month. Okay, so you're not getting anywhere close to the 1% of the property value monthly if you can barely collect that. It just doesn't make sense in Canada with the cost of the real estate, the value of it, the property taxes that you're paying on it, the maintenance costs. If you have a condo, you've got condo and maintenance fees. Most of these buildings are very cheaply made. They're sinking, they're leaking. There's all kinds of like issues with the actual construction of the property. So condo fees, or if you have a townhouse unit or a strip of townhouses, the fees on that go up and up. So I know that, you know, real estate generally looks very attractive to the youth or to those that are looking for ways to multiply their money and make a lot of money, but the market matters. And again, I learned this from my mentor years and years ago. You have to start with 1% of the value of the property being collected in rental income for it to be considered interesting. And the market here has sucked. It's just gone downhill. That metric has just gotten worse and worse every year, and I haven't seen it improving. And I saw the values of the properties going up and up, so I just figured, you know what, let's get rid of these. The other thing too is I don't really like Canada over the long-term basis. I don't think it's a great place to throw down roots and build a family, build a life, create a network. My strategy, and I've said this before, is long-term, basically like an exit. And that's probably going to take 4 to 6 years for me. People are like, where are you going to go? When are you going to do it? What it is? Like, don't worry about it, okay? Like, I don't tell people what I do before I do it. I tell you after I've done it. It's only the guys in my inner circle that know what I'm thinking in that regard. So to the point of the property, guys, you got to be really super careful. I'm not a big fan of the Canadian market. I think that you should really take a close look at what you're doing if that's the market that you're in. I see a lot of videos on YouTube, even friends of mine are like making videos that are in the economic space where they're talking about housing and housing potentially collapsing in the US and things going very, very badly, and look at this metric and look at that metric. And I can tell you that it's not as bad as it is in Canada. It's really, really bad here. This is one of the most overinflated markets, and to be honest with you, it is not going to change anytime soon. They are not reducing the amount of immigration. I don't see the government, or even a replacement government, like if Trudeau gets voted out in 2025 and we get a conservative government, which looks like the best replacement government at this time when it comes to popularity, in the polls. I don't see the Conservatives, which are literally just liberal light now at this point in time here in Canada, changing the immigration policies, because if they do, they'll be called out. They'll be called racist or something, xenophobic or homophobic. They'll make up some phobic as to why that's being happened, and you'll see people have a spaz and a hissy fit. So that's just a general consensus, the general direction, the pulse that I'm picking up on. And I'm not a young man anymore. I'm not a spring chicken. I'm more of a seasoned gentleman, and I'm tuned in. If I can put it that way. I know what's going on. I've got friends that are builders. I have friends that pour, basements, construction. They're busy, and there's no let up on it, and they don't build enough. They don't have enough construction workers. There's not enough housing starts, and that's not going to change for years. So the direction of the Canadian pricing, like housing pricing, is going to continue to go up. Will it come down? Yes, I believe it's eventually, probably, I'm going to say in the 3 to 5 year mark, probably the bubble will pop. And when I say pop, it's not going to correct 90% or some crazy number like that. You might see a correction 20, 30, 40%, I don't know. But significant enough where the pricing comes down and people will be re-entering in the market, and you'll see another push or another bubble sort of following that afterwards. So that's my take on housing. Rich, stop talking about the girls, talk about opportunities in real estate. That's what I think about real estate. So what are some good alternatives? I suppose would be the next follow-up question. Like, well, what are you doing, Rich? I'm not bullish on Canada, okay? I think this run will probably go again for another 2 to 3 years minimum. So, I mean, my principal residence will probably triple in value, and there's no capital gains tax when you sell that here in Canada. Yet, the federal government's talking about imposing a tax on your capital gains and your principal residence because they've run out of shit to tax. They tax everything else here in Canada. I mean, your personal income tax at the higher rates is over 50%. You're paying tax on taxes after you've been taxed when you go to the gas pump, when you buy shit at a store, when you're buying this, that, and the other thing. Like, you're just taxed everywhere you go. So they have to continue to create tax revenue to pay for all the policies and frivolous, dumb spending that they're doing here. So I think that you're going to see a capital gains tax on your principal residence. How much is that going to be? I don't know. But whatever free money you think you're going to make off your principal residence, I invite you to pay very, very close attention to what's going on in Parliament and any bills that they're going to pass. Because if there's an opportunity to exit at the top before they introduce a capital gains tax, you should look at that on the principal residence. I have certainly got my eyes open and my fingers on the pulse. So Canada, not a big fan. I would look at putting money elsewhere. I like certain cryptocurrencies, obviously. I've been talking about that for years. I'm in and out of those. There's some that I hold long term, obviously, things like Bitcoin, which have a big, bright future, in my opinion. There's some other layer ones, some new ones coming out in bull runs. I have friends in the space that are devs, and they tell me what's going on. So there's certain things, with crypto that look favorable. Real estate outside of Canada, I don't think that the US real estate market is as bad as you're hearing some of these guys talk about, because in my estimation the Canadian market's probably at least 5 to 10 times worse, and it still hasn't popped yet, and I still think it's going to continue on over the next 3 to 5 years before we see any kind of correction or a change in that direction. So maybe looking at real estate outside of Canada, in the US, Central, Southern America. I have friends that are buying real estate and developing in Colombia. They're guys that are unplugged, right? They're like, F this, I'm not dealing with this woke stuff. I want to deal with reasonable housing prices in nice climates. It's cold as shit here in the wintertime and winter's not, half the year like they say. It's like 7 or 8 months of the year, if we're being honest. The weather sucks. So these guys are looking for greener pastures, right? And places like in Latin America, in Europe, Eastern Europe, and parts of Asia, do the work. There's guys out there that talk about these things routinely on the channel. If you want to look at passports and residencies and things like that, take a look at my friend Raphael, who runs the Wealthy Expat channel. He talks about these things often as well. But look for greener pastures. If you want to invest, in property there, that's something to contemplate. Be very careful though, because a lot of these Latin countries, for example, I was looking at buying some real estate in Tulum, which is the south of Playa, just before or leading up to the big development of that area. And I have friends that own lots of real estate there, and I think that they're risk exposed. But in Mexico, if you're a gringo, like if you're not domestic Mexican, you can't own nice real estate. When I say nice real estate, on water or close to water. And the other thing that I've been warned about as well by domestic Mexicans, friends of mine that live down there, is that the government can easily change the laws to acquire real estate at any time if they want from people that are outsiders. I can't remember if they've done this before, but the warning was strong. The other thing too is, if you buy real estate in a place like Mexico, for example, you think Tulum's a dope place, maybe you want to have a place down there in the winter, you want to move there because of the bohemian sort of vibe. I like it, it's very nice. I mean, it's changing over the years, but if that's something that you like, one of the things that you have to understand is, if you are getting into real estate and you have an opportunity to buy it, you generally don't put it in your own name. There's a bare trust agreement tied into a bank and a law firm, and all a bare trust agreement means is that you still own it, but you're not technically on title. Like, somebody else holds the title for you, so they can circumvent or bypass that law. So there's all kinds of mechanisms and instruments and stuff that get put into place to sort of deal with these things and circumvent them and all that sort of stuff. I mean, the government, which controls the banks, by the way, could say, oh, by the way, we need to seize these assets to pay off something or raise capital or to pay for some new program for some single mommy sort of thing or whatever. There could be any number of things that they could want to do in the future, if inclined, which could put your wealth at risk. So diversification is always key in any of these things. If you like real estate, so in closing, if you like real estate, I get it. A lot of people have made a ton of money off it. There's a famous story where Donald Trump, I think he bought 40 Wall Street for something like $1 million, which was a dilapidated old building. This was decades ago, obviously, before. But good real estate deals exist. I think you'll see some good real estate deals coming your way in the next 3 to 5 years. Definitely in Canada, around 5-year mark. And the States, you'll probably see it in a few years' time. Some better opportunities. I like buying when there's chaos, when there's blood in the street, crypto market goes to shit, Bitcoin goes down to $12,000. I'll scoop some of that up. Housing market changes and there's a good opportunity to buy in, I'll scoop up some of that. So you have to get good at watching these patterns, understanding patterns. Look for good mentors, people that are in the space. So if you like real estate, go work for a real estate developer, go work for somebody that's a builder, go work for somebody that owns and manages commercial real estate. I'm not saying do it for your entire life, but if you want to understand it and get into it, do it for a few years until you sort of get the ins and outs of it, like you get red pilled on the market sort of thing. And if you want to compete and get into it, then do that. There's some great stories about Manny Koshabon, who's that guy in San Diego, the Persian dude that moved to the States in his teens, didn't speak a word of English. He's one of the richest guys on the West Coast now, owns lots of supercars and Bugattis and stuff like that. There's lots of interviews with him online talking about how he built his real estate empire. And in almost every case, these guys made their wealth buying when shit was cheap. So don't buy at the top when it's fear of missing out and all that. That's when you do it. Anyway, I'll leave it on that note. Pin below, there's a bunch of useful links, including my book, other playlists and videos on my channel. Leave a comment. You tell me what you think. Do you guys want to hear me sort of riff off on videos like this on a more frequent basis? Let me know below. And maybe I'll make some more stuff on topics that seem interesting to you guys. You got any feedback? Drop that comment too. Peace out.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.